All right, so we're here today with another episode of First Step, and today we are graced with the presence, the privilege, the honor of having a good friend of mine, lucky me, and a stalwart, a veteran, a trailblazer in the realm of the arts, entertainment, and media. He has done theater, he has done TV, he has done radio, um, he has, you name it, he sang. So you name it. I guess he has. I guess you'd call him what, the triple threat or the quadruple threat, depending on what it is.
Right? It is a number of angles that come from.
You understand? So without further ado, we have with us today at First Step, Conrad Parris. Conrad, how are you
Good
doing, my partner?
everybody. Good. Everything cool for the hour.
Yeah.
Circumstances being what they are.
Presently, yes. Presently,
Yes.
we faced with what we faced with the COVID situation, and we're working through it.
hmm
How has this situation affected you in terms of I know you would be part of the, I guess, essential services, still having to go out and do your show on radio. But
Right.
apart from that, how has it affected you in terms of, positively or negatively? Because I figure people could switch this up now to work in their favor, to probably tackle some of the things that they wanted to get to. Yeah.
I mean, of course, it hasn't been that terrible for me.
Right.
Of course, everyone is impacted, and this might sound like a little bit of simmy-dimmy, but from a vibrational perspective, you could feel the tentativeness. You know that everybody is perhaps on edge. Might be a strong word, but I guess on edge. I guess on edge could actually be a little appropriate.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with that, and as a broadcaster, you have to be very aware of that in order to speak, to relate to your audience.
Exactly.
So you're dealing with that. Whether you're on air or not. You just feel it in the air. Like every
Right.
time every time I play Feel the Love from Freetown Collective, I always tell people, try to tap into that as opposed to tapping into what already persists, all the anxiety, all of the negativity, all of that, you know, all of that feeling of confusion,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm doing my best to try to deal with it as best as I can. Make sure that I have all my masks. Fortunately, I personally I already know a thing or two about social distancing, so that hasn't been particularly difficult.
Uh, uh,
Um, but I've made sure to, and I continue to ensure that I get everything I need. I moved recently, so I've started doing a little gardening.
oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and
Uh,
I'm learning a lot.
well, I mean, it's an ongoing thing, eh? You had
Yeah.
you're ongoing. I'm trying to. I want to take us back a few years ago, quite
Mm.
some years. When I would have first met you, which would have been in studio when myself and Giandre we set up the studio in St James, and
Yes.
my first interaction with you, I always was remarkable. It always amazed me a power recall, boy. You were able to recall songs. You would give it the name, you would give it the date, and these songs, and I said, but this man was like a library. I don't know what it is. Your brain was just able to. It was sharp on, and I didn't even expect that from you in terms of how well researched you were in music, thinking knowing of your theater background. So
hmm
how was the walk from? And we're gonna. I guess we'll go back into it. How was the move from theater into broadcasting? And this is probably fast tracking a lot, but how did that come about? And what were the steps you took to get you to currently be in the position of a radio host?
Well, it was something that I always wanted to do. Before I even became a full-fledged actor or started my training in 1995, I wanted to become a radio announcer because I'd grown up listening to some of the great broadcasters, God rest Barbara Soon Soul, Bob Gittins, Holly Thomas, Edison Carr, all of these people. And actually, I how old was I? I was probably in my late teens, about to finish school. And I remember that Edison Carr actually had something of a competition where, he asked people to do demos and submit them to him, and he would actually play them on air. Mine actually made it to air. I wish I still had that cassette.
Wow.
Yeah. But I did that. I did that some many years ago. I figure if I listen back to that right now, I would probably cringe. And even so many years later, in 2014, when I finally decided to get back to it, partially because around that time I wanted to try something new, and also because I needed to do it, because that's how survival works here in Trinidad and Tobago as an actor. You don't you don't often get the opportunity to survive just by working in theater or in television, So I decided, well, let me do this. And I had applied to a couple stations before I finally got onto 107.7 at PTRN. But once I got on to 107.7, it was a bit of a baptism of fire for me, because I had to unlearn certain things. Sure, I would have had a foundation in theater and even a foundation in media as a voiceover artist, but I had to unlearn some of those things in order to be able to relate directly to my audience. I had to dismantle what I learned and rebuild it, and I think that in itself has taught me a lot about acting as well. All of the avenues that I decided to pursue, they are all interconnected. It's just that you might probably take it for granted that these things are automatic, but no. Every one of these disciplines has a way in which you operate, a modus operandi, and you have to learn what that is. You can't skip that. And I realized that I could not skip that. So I had to learn certain things. And once I learned those things, it informed how I broadcast, and it also informed how to carry that even to working in theater, which is very immediate. Your audience is right in front of you. Depending on the forum in which you work, your audience is barely 20 feet away from you. So, you really, as a broadcaster, you really have to put yourself in that position that you're talking to this group of people scattered all over the globe now. But at the same time, you cannot forget that these people, in as much as they are not in the room with you, they're directly in front of you. You have to make that link. I admittedly was tapping into radio voice a lot. You know me and radio voice, because I've been voiceovers 20 years,
Right.
maybe a little more. But yeah, broadcasting is not just about having a good voice. It is about establishing connection, just like acting is.
And I always, in terms of your initial foray in the in broadcasting, we just want to stay here for a little bit. And you now having to adopt a different, or what you had in your mind initially as to how you would approach being a broadcaster. You had to turn it on its head, so to speak.
Yes.
And how does that speak to your personality in terms of adapting to situations, and how important you think that adaptability is in moving forward in pursuit of whatever it is you want to do?
Adaptability is crucial. It is something that you cannot avoid at all. You have to be able to adapt, because I mean, we're living in a time right now, and I'm not just talking about COVID-19. I'm talking about this 21st century where it's pretty much the information age. Yet still, so many people are misinformed and even disinformed because of how pervasive social media could be. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to understand that, well, how important social media is, how to use it correctly, how in order to inform yourself as well as to inform others. And regardless of what you're doing, whether you're a broadcaster or baker or a chef or a lawyer or some kind of corporate entity, you have to be able to adapt, because for us, we would have grown up during a time where it was still fairly okay to take your parents' advice on getting a good job, so that you could always have a source of income. You could pursue your artistic endeavors, inclusive of music and theater. I always used to get this from my mother in particular. My father, God rest his soul, he understood, but my mother took a while to come around. I had to prove to her that yes, I could live by this. But even while I was proving that, I had to always be on the lookout for opportunities in order to be viable. And that is how I transitioned into television. That is how I transitioned into radio. That is how I transitioned into doing a web format show, which I would probably get back to eventually. And this time, during this pandemic time, I am really trying to find ways to adapt. And that is what you have to do until you die. There's never going to be, I don't think even in the time that we came up in, it was really about being able to get that job that could mind you for 40 years. Right. But now I can pretty safely say that system that we came up in is completely dismantled. So you have to adapt. You have to find a way in order to survive. And even if you pick one discipline, I mean, we live in Trinidad and Tobago where, because of certain restrictions that we may have because of how things are set up, people tend to have side hustles. So you may have your job, but you also have other streams of income that will ensure that you get what you want, or sometimes what you need. Some people do side hustles in order to survive. It's not just to pay the bill. Yeah, it's not just a matter of luxury. It's a matter of survival. So I think Trinbagonians are uniquely positioned in understanding adaptability. Even if they don't understand the word, they know that they always have to be on the lookout for something legal to do in order to be able to live out here, so that you could deal with having to get from point A to point B, literally or figuratively. So
And
it's crucial.
I think I want to go back a little bit in terms of having to adapt. And I don't know how much of it would have been a personality thing, as in innate, this is Conrad Parris, or if it would have been learned. But going back to you interacting with your mom and having to convince her now of something that you felt within yourself to pursue the arts, right? Which a lot of people would be faced with, You have, boy, how you going to pay the bills? How you going on, get food,
Mm-hmm.
You
get a job to fall back on.
You understand? You had to have a plan B. You had to have something to fall back on,
Mm-hmm.
and that is one of the things with people who are in the arts or entrepreneurs or whatever. You always, especially as you said in Trinidad and Tobago, you always advise that, boy, these things, could fail, and you need to have something to keep you going. But you speaking with your mother, how much of a knowingness and a belief in yourself that, this is the way for Conrad Parris to go, and then you now having to get that courage to convince her of your path. Then how difficult was it for you to stand up with your belief?
It's amazing how powerful self-conviction is. I think on that ever so often, and I would say, man, I must have been crazy, like batshit crazy, to say that at that particular time, that is what I was. That is what I wanted to do, and I was adamant about that. That it makes me think, wow, that was pretty ballsy. I think about now. I don't know if I am. I don't know if I have become. I guess I have become a little comfortable, and by extension, a little complacent. But that level of daring, for want of a better term, is what is necessary constantly. I mean, I'm sure you could speak to this too. Launching out on your own as a producer, as a studio owner, working in this business, becoming a lecturer, in what you have practiced, that transition, and you're constantly on the lookout for things to do that could, maintain your viability, because you're a family man.
Yeah, definitely.
I just out here trying to establish myself, but that doesn't
This is trying.
that is no less valid than what someone with a family does, or someone who's married, or someone who's in a relationship. I'm in a relationship, and we have to constantly find ways in order to be viable. In this time, it's not just all we talk about, but a lot of it is grounded in being able to ride out this storm, so that we could be for the next one, whatever it is. And I keep thinking in conversations that I have with any of my friends that you have to have a level of foresight. I don't know if I had foresight in that time where I was having those discussions with my mother. I was probably a little pig-headed in saying that this get it. I don't want to have this quote unquote steady job. I would just want to be able to do this. Invest all this energy in some corporate endeavor, and then turning around and having to deal with rehearsal and trying to work on our character and to ensure that I keep getting voice work You know,
Right.
I find that is too much work. You have to eliminate one.
Right.
And that's what I did. I remember having a conversation with Giandre,
Mm-hmm.
actually, about that. And he said he had that conversation with his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like his response, unique individual that he is.
Mm-hmm.
His mother said that, you have to find something, you're sure that this is what you want to do, you have to, or, you have to find something that you could fall back on.
Right.
And he responded to his mother, do doctors or lawyers have to find the things that they need to fall back on in order to be viable? And I was like, yeah, good on you. I don't know how your mother does that. My mother would think that very well.
I didn't think how much come back from that response.
Exactly, but that is really the kind of mentality that you have to have, regardless of your perspective. And again, from what I said earlier, we live in a time where right now it doesn't matter what pursuit you choose. If you want to become an actuary, which is a fairly lucrative job,
Mm-hmm.
still
Mm-hmm.
you have to be very aware of the trends around you. And I figure that actuaries have a better view of the board than people, because they are very aware of the ebbs and flows within the economy, so that they can know how to roll with the tide. But as much as, and I'm very mindful of this now, somebody may be listening to what I'm saying and thinking that, okay, in order to stay ahead, you have to make sure to outline your passions, but not just outline them, but find a way to monetize each of them. That is not necessarily true. In as much as you may have more than one passion, keep something for yourself, something that you enjoy, something that you could be gleefully bad at if needs be.
Right.
In order to maintain your sanity. There are some people, God bless them, they do their best to monetize every passion that they have.
Right.
That takes a lot of work, and I commend these people. I admire them.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps I should a page or 2 or 10. But I'm actually putting pen to paper and working on that. But you really have to have that level of gumption in order to step foot right now. And I think the current generation, I hate to use the term millennial, but I think this generation, they have a better understanding of that than we did, because we were in that transitional period where we were moving from one paradigm to another.
I agree. So you're correct, because what we would have been tweaking, or as you said, transitioning through millennials or this generation, as they pretty much have their mindset, and then with the exposure to the amount of information that they have have a bit more gumption, as you said, in terms of, I want to do this and this is what I'm going to do. I want to find out from you, in terms of knowing, the knowingness to pursue your initial passion, which I want to believe have been acting.
Yes.
How much of a knowing for you was this, or was it a matter of hey, you just bounce up, you like watching movies, or you see a couple of people doing it and you say, I could do that too? So was it more like something innate from jump, or you were kind of coerced or directed in that direction, moved towards that direction?
It's a little bit of both. My father, some people may not know this, but my father, Hamilton Parris, he was an actor. He was one of the original members of the Trinidad Theatre Workshop. He did a lot of the first stagings of Derek Walcott's plays. He was in O Babylon. He was Frog in Tijan and His Brothers. He was in The Joker of Seville. You know, he's one of the original players in the Trinidad Theatre Workshop. I was born at a time when he had already folded up his acting enterprise, because again, that was a very different time. You could not live by being an actor at all unless you were trying to work perhaps in the United States or in the UK or in Canada, you know, as some members of that generation established like that, you know, like the Sullivan Walkers and the Michael Walkers and Barbara Assoons of the world. But I didn't get a chance to see him work. Perhaps, you know, like I was about 8, 9, and there used to be Play of the Month airing on TTT. I cannot remember which play it was, but I remember seeing him in one play and saying, "Wow, cool!" You know, there were people in that cast, some greats, Maurice Brash, I think Susan Abraham, crazy cast. Right. And well, also even later on, seeing him in BIM as the Grenadian boat captain, you know, replete with Grenadian accent, and I was like, whoa, all right, cool. And during my primary school days, because big up Mobile Anglican School, the will does it. Yes, that is the motto. Because of coming up in that school where there were a lot of performance-based teachers, not the least of which being the great Mavis John. Mavis John was my second-year teacher. Wow. And there were a bunch of performers in there. There was Mavis John, then Mavis Elcock. Joan Belfort, who is a dancer and playwright and artist currently based in Jamaica. Yeah. She was my first-year teacher and my first crush ever. I told her that, and she laughed at me. People like Gwendolyn Ross, and a host of others. I'm trying to remember her name. Oh, there was a lady. She was a prominent member of the Lydians. Miss Archer. What was her first name? I can't remember. But there were quite a few. There were quite a few teachers like that on the staff. And wow. Yeah, you found a lot of that being injected into the students when you grow up as an adult and you realize how those influences just seeped into regular academia. You're like, wow, I was exposed to a lot, and as a result of that, my mother was also a teacher at Mobile Anglican School. She eventually became vice principal and retired as vice principal. Right. So that also influenced the fact that, you know, I represented my school in many artistic endeavors, from spelling bee to music festival to art competitions. I participated in all of those things. Right. In primary school. By secondary school level, I was trying to duck those very same things because those were considered cool.
They weren't cool at all.
When you hit teenagers, when you hit that section, you're trying to be cool, and you know, pursuing artistic endeavors wasn't necessarily cool. Right. So
you went to what is George's, right?
I did A levels at St. George's, but I did the brunt of my first 5 years of secondary school at St. Mary's, and because I was having too much of a good time, I ended up repeating 4 and 5 at Woodbrook Government Secondary.
Right. Okay.
Yes. My secondary school life wasn't. I mean, I dabbled a little bit with the choir at the time because there was music offered as a subject. It wasn't compulsory; it was an elective. So by the time you got to Form 3, even though I was taking piano during that time, I didn't really connect my extracurricular piano to the school. So it remained an extracurricular activity, and I really didn't venture too much into any artistic pursuits during school. My older brother, on the other hand, who was also a student at St. Mary's, he was one of the foremost art students in the school. He'd represented the school and the country as an artist in various competitions, doing very well. And he, of course, transitioned into advertising.
Right.
He's been ever since. Me, I had to flounder and do all kinds of things. It was only when I got my first job out of school, working as a library assistant trainee. I joined the OJT program, the on-the-job training program, and I got stationed at the Parliament Library in the Red House. I don't even know if there's still a Parliament Library now. When I go and take the grand tour, I will go and check and ask.
Yeah. Let me know what's going on inside of there.
Yeah, for real. I really want to go. But yes, I was stationed there during my first job, and right across the street was the former Trinidad Theatre Workshop at the old fire station.
Right.
Now. And because during my first job, I had no life. It was just work and home for me. I needed an extracurricular activity. And I had friends who were working and, doing things at Trinidad Theatre Workshop. So I used to go and mime across there. And then they posted a new actors workshop flyer. And I took one and I said, you know what? I'm going to join this. And in 1995, out of what would seem like sheer boredom. But but the fact of the matter is that was harkening back to something that started a long time ago when I saw my first film. I became an avid TV watcher, which is so weird because now I don't have much TV at all.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's strange whenever people say, hey, yo, you're checking out this on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, and I'm like, no, what's that? And they're like, you don't know what that is? I'm like, no. My girlfriend had to convince me that, Game of Thrones was a thing to watch. I came in the season.
But you know what?
I had no clue.
You know what though?
That's where I am now. But after all of those years of secondary school avoidance of the arts, it came up to bite me once I joined the New Actors program. It really awakened something that was there lying dormant. Once I did that, I was like, I knew at that point that was what I wanted to do. It would take me a couple years before I could actually have that wonderful sit down with my parents and say that this is exactly what I want to do.
Right.
That was quite a day, let me tell you. But I think it was in that process during that training program and the eventual offshoots of that, because it was during working at the New Actors program that my teacher Bernard Hazel, who used to play Herbert Gunn Monroe on Westwood Park and was one of the co-writers of the show, he got me to work on Westwood Park. because he realized that I was serious, and I wanted to delve further and further into it. It was because of how I took to it that he introduced me to Westwood Park. It was because of that I'm trying to remember. It would be Charmaine Rock. Yes, it was because of working on Westwood Park. Actually, I got into doing voice work and linking up with Charmaine Rock, who was then at Hernandez FCB. And then she moved over to Valdez and Torrey before she moved to set up her own company. And that is where the ball started rolling. But once I made that connection,
in terms of, so you started you ventured across to Trinidad and Tobago Theatre Workshop, where you would have been mentored, I guess, by your I'm assuming he would have been the head head tutor there in terms of training or workshopping of all the actors that would have come in. In terms, did he suggest you going into Westwood Park, or was it something you wanted to do and he said, listen, Conrad, and you approached him?
He approached me because he approached me because when we started, there were about, I think it was 33 of us, but by the time as you would expect with the laws of attrition, 33 turned into 8.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about 8 or 9 of us. And I was the only male left.
Wow.
So they were, I don't know if he decided, I don't know how it came about where he wrote a character for me, or if he saw me or saw my work and decided that a character must be written for me. I don't know what the process was.
Right.
He said, well, listen, because Westwood Park needed characters as it was expanding. It needed actors as it was expanding anyway. So asked me, and I auditioned, and I got to play the role of Paul Campbell on Westwood Park.
Right.
I think. Well, it wasn't really. Not that I think about it. It wasn't really a case of me being a shoo-in. I still had to audition.
Right.
But
okay.
He was the one who suggested I audition.
Oh, very good. Now, how was it in terms of starting? I had a conversation with actually one of the other episodes with Ken Simmons, and we were speaking about approaching whatever it is you want to do and not giving in to fear, because you'll have a little bit of apprehension as in yourself. Boy, I'm not ready. People will laugh at me. Has that ever been a factor in how you approach things, or you just say, just get it done and go with it?
That is something for me. I don't know if as a matter of fact, I do know people who don't have to deal with that. I am not one of those people. I do have to face that every once in a while. And it becomes a little, not necessarily difficult, but it becomes trickier the older you get. Take, for example, when a couple of years ago, after putting it off for decades, I decided that, I'm going to try my hand as a singer, something that I wanted to do for a very long time. Right. I did some of it during my university days, and a few of my friends came to my shows. My friends from university days came to the Conbrio shows that I did, and or the shows that I did with Letitia Sylvester. And they were like, "Look at you! Look how long since I've heard you sing. Why Why did you not do this for so long? And I was so apprehensive about that. And I'm still chiseling off my anxiety about singing.
Wow.
I know that I have to get back to it once these restrictions are lifted. But
Right.
it's something that I need to do. I'm not sure. I'm still a little unsure as to how to go about it, because songwriting, for example, has been a thing for me for a long time.
Uh-huh.
From my mid to late teens, right up to early adolescence, I used to just, get melodies in my head and sit down and probably write like 2 songs a day. Now, if when a melody hits me,
Uh-huh.
it would take me days to,
To squeeze it out.
all because I didn't consistently flex those muscles that were just so wonderfully agile back then. Yeah, and the same goes for singing. Something that I really have to conscientiously work at, because I've put it off for so long. So yes, apprehension does get the better of me sometimes,
Right.
uh, when tackling something new. But the important thing is to acknowledge that you have those apprehensions. Don't deny that you have those apprehensions. Same way that
Exactly.
you don't let them get the better of you, but you acknowledge the presence of those things and you let it do its thing for a little time. However long it takes,
That's
5
just it.
couple
And
of days,
and and
and
another
and make sure to invest that positive energy to prepare yourself, because you're going to do it. You have to do
right,
it.
right.
So tell yourself that you have to do it, and let that anxiety do its thing, and then get on with it. That's what you have to do.
That's just it. And without taking the first step in terms of moving to what you desire, or what you have planned, you never know what the outcome could actually be. And I remember the series that the period you had with your concert series. I think it was
Mhm.
in Kaiso Blues, no?
That's right.
Right. And prior to that, if you rewind some years when we would have done Easy B for
That's right.
is it Penis Monologues? I can't
Uh,
remember.
we did one version of that song, Filipinas Monologues,
Monologue,
with
right.
Mark Nottingham and Olatunji.
Ola, yes.
The first time we did it was for a show called We Like It So, which
Yes.
which was that piece was actually written, or those 2 pieces were written by me, and
Yes.
all of the pieces were written by the actors in the show, which
Right.
was myself, the late great Raymond Chukong, the late great Myron Ali, and
Mhm.
Penelope Spencer, the still great.
Right.
Um,
And I remember, right. I remember that because one, I would have done the production for Bull, right,
that's
for
right.
Easy B, and
Uh-huh.
then I also, well, through doing that, you were able to organize some comms to me to attend. I think it was in Central Bank,
Yes, it
and
was.
what I remembered, which stood out to me more than anything else, is in the process of producing Bull for Easy B, how vested you were in this thing, right? You came across to me as the consummate performer, right? So when you wrote the song, you told me, Arion, this is what I want. This is how we had to set it up. And I was just going along with your instruction. And when it was time for you to record, man, I said, but this man, now I haven't recorded Marshall Montano up until this point, right? I mean, right now, to date. But you were so I was totally blown away. When you're done, you're winded, you're blowing, because I mean, it was a high energy song. But is that the approach you normally given everything once you make up your mind? Yo, this is where I'm going. This is how I do it. 100 or...
You have to. And I mean, I think that would have come from my training as an actor, and I would elaborate on that to say that, you know, of course, as I said earlier, my father, Hamilton Parris, he was an actor, and he had quit acting in order to start his family, you know, get married, have me and my brother. And what I realized when I started training as an actor was that all this time while we were growing up, the lessons that my father was teaching us was actually acting lessons. They were all acting lessons. So when it came down to that approach to anything really as an adult, that is something that my father would have taught me since I was a little boy. It's like, when you're going to do something, you have to flesh it out and do it 100%. You have to understand what it is you're doing, you know, dismantle it, you know, down to the finest molecule, if you will, understand it, rebuild it so that you could attack it with full force Dakota.
Because in the recording session of Bull, when we had it after production and you were putting down your lines, it seemed as though you transformed from Conrad Parris into Easy B in the room then. So I was feeling a different energy, because you are normally more demure or proper and, you know, easy going.
Why does everyone think that? I don't get it.
But when it was time to get into character, you totally transformed. And I felt it. I knew I wasn't dealing with Conrad anymore. This person is somebody else. And I guess in approaching that, sometimes we have our own, I guess, our natural hindrances or you know, that we would have to work with. And sometimes it would mean probably taking up something else to get the job done, then becoming someone else to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. And which is why, you know, I think acting training is so important, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, because we have this innate propensity as a people to be so dramatically connected to ourselves and each other, you know, just the way that we talk to each other. You know, there's something so innately dramatic about it. And I think even though, you know, I'm not saying that everyone should become an actor, but everyone should have some level of acting training to make them realize, you know, the kind of tools that they could have access to, you know, so that regardless of what they choose to pursue, be it science, be it law, be it medicine, be it technology, whatever it is, they will always come across in life some forum that is going to demand that extra amount of zeal, zest from them.
Right.
If it is, they have to. Because I mean, you hear performers do this all the time. You know, the first example that comes to mind is Beyonce. This performer that is so revered right now. You know, she would be the first one to tell you that she enters this whole Sasha Fierce persona in order to project this thing that blows people away. But once But once she steps out of that, she's Beyonce the wife, Beyonce the mother, Beyonce the friend, cousin, you know, the daughter, you know, who, you know, is apparently nothing like what we see on stage.
Well,
and I think everyone can benefit in learning how to develop a persona apart from themselves, but still from within,
Right.
that could tap into, so that they could find their superhero self.
It's true. It's true.
And it's connected to spirituality too. It is something. It is something very spiritual, regardless of whether you are a spiritual person or you're agnostic, or you're an atheist. There is still that spiritual level that people need to tap into. I think establishing theater as something in the curriculum from kindergarten, right through secondary school, at least, maybe it could be collective on a tertiary level, but from kindergarten go right up. It should be something that should be established here in Trinidad and Tobago, and perhaps by extension throughout the Caribbean. I think that is a way to tap in to our uniqueness as a people.
Right. I think one of the things I am always, I guess, apprehensive with people in the arts, people who are trained in theater, is how much of you am I seeing? So I don't know, because you have this skill, you know what I mean? No, and I'm talking about outside the theater. I mean on the street now, because you all could adapt and mama guy me. So, but at the same time,
that's the thing. That thing. And sorry to cut you, but in my personal life, that is always something you end up hearing. And again, that's why theater education is so important, in everyone understanding what acting really is. Acting is not, in as much as the word might imply that it's about pretense. Acting is not about pretense at all. It is about understanding how people function, so that you could, as an oversimplification, is understanding how people function so that you could tell a story.
Right.
All an actor is a storyteller, a conduit to tell a story.
Wow.
But when you really think about it, that's what we all are in our regular lives.
Definitely.
We're all storytellers trying to tell a story, trying to figure out, except that this story is unfolding around us. And we have to understand ourselves and our functions within that story, so that the story could be better fleshed out, so that whomever we come into contact with could have a clearer understanding of not just you, but of themselves. And it could be the kind of contagion that we need, where we could inform each other and teach each other things and help each other to grow. That is ultimately what acting is supposed to do. I mean, I am pretty sure that there are some actors anywhere in the world, who do take these skills and use them for ill, but ultimately that is not how it's supposed to play out at all. Acting has taught me that, and Raymond always used to say this in directing people as well as teaching actors, that a good actor is the mark of a good person, and vice versa. Acting is about honesty. How honest you are with yourself reflects how honest you are with people. So dealing with an actor is not about, or shouldn't be about, at least, dealing with a faker. Dealing with an actor, or a good one at least, is about dealing with being present all the time, being as honest as possible, as often as possible. So when you're dealing with me, at least, you're dealing with me. I might be bothered about something, or I might be excited about something, as you would have seen me. you know, and that is genuinely me that you're dealing with. And even like as an actor, for example, and I do this, I've learned this as a broadcaster as well. You know, sometimes you're not feeling at your optimum, and there it is. You know, you have to go on stage and perform and give it 100%. The audience doesn't want to know that you're having a shitty day.
Yeah.
Just
And they don't deserve it either.
Huh?
No, I was saying they don't deserve you.
They don't deserve that. That's what they're paying money for. You know, they're paying money to be entertained and hopefully educated on some level. So, and the same thing goes for being a broadcaster. You know, when you and I teach this now. You know, when I lecture at our Star Broadcasting, I lecture in voicing for advertising. When you step into a booth, or you step into you step into a radio station, in a studio for a radio station, you get in front of that mic. You have a responsibility to your audience, and you have to always remember that. Even if you're not feeling 100%, you now have to find a way to tell people not necessarily that you're not feeling 100%, but to let people know that even when they're not feeling 100%, you have to give it 100%, and you have to try to encourage that when you're behind the microphone. You know, you have to now tell people, well, okay, sometimes you don't feel like 100%, but that doesn't mean that the person next to you has to drink in this negative energy from you. You now have a responsibility, no matter how you feel. If somebody comes to you and they need that dose of positivity, your friend, your child, your family member, they are looking for that. They're looking for that investment from you. What are you going to tell them? Man, I can't do that for you right now. No. Yeah. They need you the same way that the same way that any audience needs you to uplift them. Yeah. Because once you establish that relationship, that you're on this stage in life or as an actor, or, you know, you are on this stage and this person opposite you is either a fellow player or an audience member. They are counting on you to operate optimally.
Yeah.
And you have to deliver that. I mean, even as actors, sometimes you would come across people who don't do that, you know. They will 50% or sometimes less, depending on who you have to work with.
Right.
And you have to cope with that in real time.
And as I said, no, in terms of two things, as you brought that up, how do you find yourself coping with it? And in terms of, does it now make you dig even deeper to shine even brighter in that instance, to compensate for their lack, you know? And two, in people who would have, for want of a better word, have asked the thing, how is it I guess, yes, you reap what you sow. So how is it they would work out in the whole scheme of things? How would you adapt to suit?
Let me try to answer the first part of that, and then maybe somewhere within that I will answer the second part. The first part of that is I have had the privilege of working with director Dr. Lester Ifigo Wilkinson. And in working with him, there's something he always used to tell us when we were in rehearsal. The script is the Bible. You have to lay prostrate before it, not prostate. You have to lay prostrate before it, genuflect before it, and it will tell you everything that you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And what that informs actors to do is to realize that, trying to be a star out here is not the purpose of what you're doing. All you are is a conduit to tell a story. That's it.
Wow.
And to me, that is how I try to operate in life. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everyone has their moments where they feel like they want to shine and bling out. I think that's human, and everyone is allowed. There are people who work hard and do their best never to be in the limelight. And, people like that deserve some level of celebration, some level of recognition. And I'm sure even those people feel it is like, I know others work hard and thing, and I really want to make sure things work. But I feel like if somebody should celebrate me, man, I feel like I have a little moment to shine. Just a 1 second. I think everyone deserves. But back to that point, when you carry that out into the real world, even when you're working opposite an actor, there are some actors who will probably never pay attention to the fact. They may be technically sound, but they would never get to the crux of the matter and pay attention to the fact that, they need to subject themselves to the story. The story is the grand player in the scheme of things. And I believe that in real life, when you're trying to figure out what your purpose is, which is very important for every individual, I wonder at how important people deem self-actualization. And I mean, even like myself, sometimes you would forget after all of what would seem to be some of the incredible things that you would have done. Sometimes you would get so caught up in things that you would forget that, you tapped into that resource already. And, you may be disconnected from it now, but you can tap into it again. And I think it's something that people have to go through. And, sometimes I tell people this, for all of his flaws, and they seem to be so numerous. Look at something like Donald Trump. Donald Trump, as dare I say it, as terrible a person as he is 1,000% confident in himself that he is the best thing since sliced bread. Who are the rest of us to doubt our ability? In all of these things, that we want to do. Here is this man mucking up so many things.
Yeah.
In the globe right now, not just in America, but he just stands for so many terrible things. But he is so confident, and he would even go so far as to lash out at good people and denigrate them, and his following will lap that up. And they will be convinced that he is right just because of how confident he is. Who are the rest of us who are trying to plot our way out here and help our children and our friends, fellow family members? Who are we to doubt ourselves when you have somebody like that who is so confident in lack of ability?
Yeah, I think that kind of put things into perspective.
That's so awful. But there he is. That I don't know. I don't know if that answers the second part or even the first part of your question.
No, but I got you totally. I got you totally. But well, we look to wrap up in a little bit, but I want to ask you a couple of questions before, we look to close off. In terms of the person who might be listening, the young man, the young woman, the adult, the senior, the middle-aged, who still has that something in them burning to come out and, haven't realized that at this point, in making that move, what would you advise them, or what would you advise to that person? What should their steps be? What should they embark on?
For anyone, I think everyone knows. For those people who are trying to come to grips with that element within themselves that they've been denying for whatever reason, they may think that it's not socially acceptable. They may think that, they are going to be rejected because they pursue it. From my experience and from what I continue to experience, I think as long as it nags you and the more time passes, the more it will pain you to just leave it to lie fallow. It's going to ache. It ached me, in the early stages of my career when I was trying to find my way. Between the ache of trying to find a way to survive and earn money and trying to come to terms with this thing at that time in this place where I think even to this day it's safe to say that any artistic pursuit is still considered to be hobbyist. You really have to. Tony Hall, another great director that I had the privilege of working with, he said something to us in rehearsal. Or was it rehearsal? I think it was probably a regular conversation. People like Raymond and Tony and Efibo always have this way of imparting nuggets to people just in passing. They will lightly drop this thing and it will be a bomb on your heart. That's how it worked for me, and I don't think I'm alone in that. Tony told us once that you have to come to a point where you have to ask yourself the question. It might sound like a simple question, but it is a really deep question once you start to answer it, and start to answer it honestly. What do you want? Sounds simple, but when you try to answer that question honestly, separating yourself from all of the chaff, all of the bullshit about what you think people's expectations are of you, you take all of that away. What do you want? And it's an exercise. It's an exercise that everyone should do at any age. One, and two, that people should continue to do. I read some time ago, looking at First Peoples culture, what people would bandy about as Native American culture. That everyone goes through cycles of life. And every cycle is approximately 7 years long. So, in my personal experience, I think that's true. I think it may vary from person to person, but however long you discover your cycle to be, it is something that you should take some time alone with a journal and ask yourself that question. What do you want? And I keep telling people, giving people the video game analogy of what life is. In a video game, you're playing at a level and then you conquer that level, and then you go to another level and you realize it's more difficult than the one you just played. Life is just like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep playing this game, you're going to get knocked around at different levels, but you know, you have to come to terms with the fact that, you know, you need to get out of this level. You're going to feel at certain levels that you're stagnating, that you're not growing, that you're not enough, that you're not ready enough to tackle certain things.
Right.
Life is going to speak to you, and you have to come to terms with the fact that, you know, if you want to achieve certain things, you have to face that self, and you have to come to terms with that exercise and ask, what do you want? And the answer to that question is going to be your life. That's how Tony put it to us.
Wow.
Ask yourself the question, what do you want? And the answer to that question is going to be your life. Wow. I think that is something, yeah, he just dropped that gem, Mr. Some Ordinary.
Yeah, that's a serious nugget.
I'm telling you. And he does that all the time. Every time I speak to Tony or Ifiwo or God rest his soul with Raymond, you know, he would drop some nugget, jump in his car and go, and you're like, he'll flabbergasted. But you have to now, you know, go and take this thing
and process this.
And if not, run with it, walk with it, crawl with it. Do something, but you have to do something with it. And that is something for anyone who has this knowing desire, whatever it is, that is something that everyone needs to address, because it's not just about you, after all. You know, we are all interconnected. And this is something that we realize on a very basic level right now, if for people who didn't pay attention to it before. See that people are not paying attention to it right now, and things are at least being threatened to be clamped down even further. You know, sure, we don't know how real, we don't know everything about what's taking place in terms of this pandemic, but it's something that we post-pandemic, where you paying attention to these rules and regulations wouldn't just help you, it will help everyone. And it's going to come back to you in the long run. If you just follow these regulations and stay inside and behave yourself, and when you absolutely have to go outside, you wear your mask and or your gloves, and you wash your hands or you sanitize your hands. And when you come home, you sanitize your face or your body, and you wash your clothes a little more often than you're accustomed to. You keep doing that. The more often you do that and the more seriously you take that, is the sooner that you're going to get back to the way that things were. But if you decide to buck those trends now, it's going to take longer for you to get back to those norms that you're accustomed to. So, and the same thing applies to life. That level of discipline. Discipline is supposed to be one of our watchwords as a nation. Yet, culturally, we have a problem with discipline. I have to say we, because it includes me, you know. So,
and you just said we all interconnected in this thing. So correct.
Yeah, and discipline is going to help all of us to achieve everything that we want to achieve. But before, and it's going to help everyone that we come into contact with eventually. But before we get to any of that, you have to delve within yourself and develop this discipline that you're going to have to develop in order to come to terms with and become the person that needs to tackle this thing that is gnawing inside of you, because this thing is going to make you, it's going to make you better. And, you know, I'm thinking about it as I say it, even if you may think, because I'm sure that there are those people out there who are bent on becoming something that may not necessarily on the surface be beneficial to the world. You know, they may want power or fame or any one of those things that isn't necessarily beneficial to the world. It would be beneficial to the world, just indirectly. But we've seen throughout history, and we're perhaps seeing history unfold right now, where people who don't necessarily have the best intentions for mankind are at least teaching us indirectly how to be better people.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
We have a responsibility. If we want to be better people, we have a responsibility now to counteract that. So that those people who seem to get it for all the wrong reasons don't continue to thrive.
Wow.
That sounds lofty.
No, but I mean, within there, everything that needed to be said was said, you know. And you're right. I
really hope that helps somebody.
Man, I'm sure it would. It makes total sense to me, you know. I think you're right. You have something in you, and it's best as Tony Hall identified what it is you want. And at the end of the day, you have to do that introspection, I guess, and then start to move on it. You know, you don't want to stick, you know, because you will end up.
It will not be just for you. It may benefit so many other people. It may benefit even just one person.
Exactly.
But it's not just for you.
Exactly.
That is the character analysis analogy to what we do as actors, where we break down this character, we read the entire script. We have the benefit of knowing the entire story that we're going to present, but you know, you don't do your lines and say, well, I done my work. No, you have to read the entire script, all the characters, everything that's going on, even the character direction, if there's any, you know, and break this thing down and build it back up during the course of rehearsal and during your own introspection, you know, with the script when you have time alone. And you build this, and everyone while they're building this thing separately, when they come together, they could make this nice unified whole, and you could get all of these wonderful multi-layered things, and you as an audience member will sit back and be like, wow, and you feel this, you know. I don't know about you, you know, I even now as a theater practitioner, even now I sit down in an audience, even for a film which has a certain level of distance to it, more distance than when you go to a theatrical production. But you know, because everything is so well done, you're no longer lost in the technicals. You are impacted emotionally.
Yes.
And that is because everyone got together and really fleshed this out and did their work.
Yes.
That is what we have to do in life, except we don't necessarily have the lay of the land that an actor would have or a director would have looking at the entire story. We don't know how the story is going to unfold. But we still have, or
parts to play.
Perhaps it's even more important for us to develop ourselves so that we could know our role in this story. Perhaps developing ourselves is going to affect the outcome of the story eventually, which is why it's important for us to do this work so that we could impact an unknown outcome, hopefully.
Beautiful. Conrad, man, I would say we'll call it a day at this point, and I'm sure it has so much more.
That's
part 2 and part 3 or part 4, boy, because this was too much nuggets, I feel, you know. But Conrad, I want to say thanks so much for, you know, making the time and sharing all your experiences, all your wisdom, you know, and all your advice to the world. And who knows, when you're ready to start the next leg of the singing stint, come on, holla. You know, we might be able to finish off.
I listen. Listen, I will definitely do that. And
For sure.
I want to take the opportunity to thank you for giving me the opportunity to say this, and hopefully, it will make sense and it will touch someone out there the way that people whose knowledge, whose wisdom I've passed on here, the way that those people impacted me. And I think that is
Definitely.
I think that is everyone's responsibility. I remember having this conversation again with Chinese Laundry, Anthony Chowdhury. Every once in a while we will run into each other at Ojo World, and we'll end up having conversations. And I had to ask him about, he's reached this stage in his life now where he's doing more of this after spending so much time saying that, he didn't necessarily need to delve into that. But I think everyone needs to realize, it took me a long time. I hemmed and hawed a lot when people were asking me to lecture or to come and talk to people for a career day or something like that. I'll be like, I don't really feel comfortable doing that, because I don't feel like if I know enough. I don't feel like if I've done enough. I think everyone needs to come to terms with the fact after a while that, you have to impart what you know, because you may think that you have not done enough. Something that you would have done along the way has been impactful. Especially, I've been doing this for 25 years. That ought to count for something.
Come on, Conrad. At least a little something.
So, but thank you again for the opportunity to share what I have learned and to impart that to other people.
But Conrad, boy, the pleasure was all mine. So, ladies and gents, again, this was the wonderful Conrad Parris, sharing all these nuggets with us here today. All right, so we'll see you next time on First Step. Be blessed.
Be blessed.